Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan at SteelersDepot.com, the place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd. It's Season 9, Episode 35. And Dave, the Steelers are over 500. Took a little while longer than we thought to get there, but that was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah, I don't know how you want to term the win. Crucial, much needed. I don't know, but it definitely has this AFC North, kind of shaken back up right now, and it's really, quite honestly, it's up for grabs at this point, and we'll get into it here in a little bit, I'm sure, but we hit briefly on the Bengals and what they, I know we need to worry about what the Steelers do, but when you look at what happened in that game injury-wise for the Bengals yesterday, and now you look at what the Bengals have waiting for them on, the next 4 weeks, nothing's a given with them either. So it really is an AFC North up for grabs right now.
Yeah, it is, and obviously, this was a crucial win for the Steelers. And they did it in grand fashion. Let's just start at 30,000 feet and just say, how did you think the Steelers played?
They played like Mike Tomlin hasn't lost the locker room.
Yes, I would agree. Look, it was amazing after the game. There was so much criticism of the Steelers defense for giving up the late touchdown. There was criticism coming at all sides from Mike Tomlin for the way the play challenges and maybe some of the clock management and some of the other things they did. I mean, at the end of the day, the Steelers won the game, and you and I think are as critical as most people when the Steelers don't do things well. But how about the fact that, they went into Cincinnati, they played a team that was 4-1 on the road. They were down late, and they came back and won a game where they gave up only 7 points in the second half. Yes, it was terrible to give up a late TD drive, but I feel like a little bit on the other side of the fence here that I need to defend the Steelers in a game they won. That they won an important game and they played pretty well.
Well, I think there were several just ready to absolutely, in the media, to string Mike Tomlin up, just waiting for the final seconds, waiting for that final drive to end. And for the Steelers to lose so they could really go after Mike Tomlin. And I think Ray Fittipaldi of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's one of those. Look, we are very critical of this team. We're very critical. Some people think that I'm sure that Ben Roethlisberger owes us money. That's not the point. We know this team inside and out. I mean, we talked about it and watched this team as objectively as close as we both have can for at least the last 10 years, with a understanding of football. Would that have been a brutal loss yesterday, or would it have been a tough loss yesterday? Yes, but they didn't lose. I thought Mike Tomlin put it best closing out his press conference last night.
He was a little surly in his press conference, wasn't he?
Yeah, but not too terribly bad. There was a little bit of talk about that, whatever.
Yeah, what happened on the field?
I think something along the lines of AB and Ben or something like that. But I thought, here's the quote that stuck out to me the most, and it was right at the end. He was asked to describe his team going into the bye week. He says, "We're the same team with the same warts, trying to get better, but it's more fun to do that with a W." I mean, this team right now is not Super Bowl winning caliber, in
Correct.
my opinion.
Correct. No, they're clearly 5 or 6 teams in the league who are better than the Steelers, and 2 of them played last night. And, you can look in the NFC and we can, obviously pick the Rams and a couple others. But, but they're in the conversation of being probably, you would say, a playoff caliber team.
They are a playoff caliber team. And the thing is can they fix, during the second half, starting with the bye here, which quite honestly, this bye probably couldn't have come at a better time. I know there's no such thing probably as a bad timing of a bye week or whatever, but it will now be interesting for them to be able to do some self-scouting here, after the first 6 games, and then kind of go from there, because one would think, with the presumed health that they still have on this team, because let's face it, this team has been extremely lucky once again. I don't know if this 2-3 years in a row when it comes to injuries. Last year they lost Joe Hayden for 6 games or whatever that was, from week 9 or 10 on. This is a healthy team that should get even healthier after the bye week, meaning Morgan Burnett should be back. That's a key piece, and we'll see how they use LJ Fort, after the bye here. But one would think and expect this team, especially on the defensive side of football, to get better. Now, can they get better enough where they're going to be able to, for us to say, this is a Super Bowl caliber team? I don't know, but I saw Alex get attacked on Twitter yesterday. People just cannot stand when there are detractors out there of Mike Tomlin, that it's just Mike Tomlin's got to go no matter how good or bad things are, and people get upset when you try to slightly defend something with Mike Tomlin there. And look, until if I thought he needed to be fired, I would come out and say he needs to be fired. But we know how the Steelers work. We see the product. We understand. We kind of can look at both sides of it. It's not that case right now. So is this a Super Bowl quality team right now? No. But I think what Mike Tomlin had to say at the end of that press conference yesterday is exactly right. And should they have beaten the Bengals yesterday? Yes. Did they? Yes. Would it have been very disappointing if they wouldn't have? Yes. Anytime you hold a team to, what did they hold them to? 21 points. You should win the ball game, in my opinion. And they did.
In today's NFL, for sure. And okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. Let's start with the touchdown. So my take on that was the Bengals show 0. And God bless whoever was calling the Bengals defensive coordinators. How do you, in that situation where you're looking at a 50-yard field goal, you've got however many seconds left in the game, not many, and you're going to give up the middle of the field on a hot. So Ben obviously sees it. The Bengals show they show blitz. They crowd the line of scrimmage. Ben gets AB in motion and then reads the hot. So just first of all, perfectly executed play, perfect call. This is my, I haven't read what anybody said after the game at this point, but my take on that was that play was actually called, and then Ben has to read the hot. It didn't look to me like Ben audibled into a play. What was your take?
My take, first of all, is I would like to see what all goes into kind of that stuff. Into the building of situational kind of football and play calling like that. I mean, sure, we see the before, the after, and try.
We're going to get Ben's radio show. We're going to get his answer tomorrow.
I would hope so, because he's been good about that this year, specifically about talking about certain plays, especially ones that work out in his favor, which he's always kind of done that. They come out and I think they see a familiar. I think he saw a familiar lineup coverage with Jackson. I think over the top of AB, and at that point, you want to he decided to motion.
Did you notice how far off the line of scrimmage Antonio Brown was lining up on that play? I mean, I looked at it, and I happened to be watching the game with my brother, and I said to him, I kept saying to him, I said, AB, get up on the he wasn't going to be on the line of scrimmage, but he was like 3 yards back as opposed to a yard back. It was very curious, and I didn't know if he was just setting up to go in motion at that. At that point, I didn't know if he was going in motion, and he was very deep. And then obviously Ben moved. Ben gave him the let's go, and he goes in motion.
Yeah, and you do that, obviously to bring a guy in motion to be able to decipher if you have man-on-man coverage. And I think the key factor here, another tip that maybe they saw, and former NFL receiver who is Hawkins pointed this out, is you see the Bengals, the Bengals defender Jackson and the slot guy there both tap their helmets, give each other the signal that it's top hat coverage, meaning that even though the inside guy is lining up over the slot guy, he's going to take the break out to the middle. And they both, if you go back and look at the pre-snap on there, both of them give each other that top hat signal that's usually can be used as a clue that you might be seeing a zero coverage and all-out blitz in the middle there. And really, everybody sees that, sees the communication between the DBs, and that's supposedly the universal sign for that. And then Ben described it perfectly. At that point, all he knows is he's got to get that football in his hands as quick as possible, and then you hope your wide receiver reads the hot. And the thing about zero coverage thing is it vacates the middle of the field. So there's no help inside, so your receiver just runs a quick slant to where the vacated portion of the field is. And if you get the ball out quick enough on the hot read, the wide receiver does have to read that, the whole house is coming in the middle there, which AB does, and Ben hits him in stride. Ben even said, look, I thought even before that ball was snapped that might have not only be an easy completion, but that could go for a touchdown potentially on that. Now I don't know how much hyperbole that is, but when you have a vacated middle of the field and Antonio running slap clean like that, you probably have to like the chances. Now the other aspect of it is that you have your wide receiver up on the line of scrimmage ahead of AB in the bunch. Justin Hunter this time just basically running a vertical and interference, a legal pick, whatever you want to call it. And, to his credit, he acted that out well.
Did it right. And for those who don't remember the rule, if you're within a yard of the line of scrimmage, I mean, basically what you do there is legal. So, there's a lot of talk about what happened, and Dave will get into some of the specifics about the postgame, about some of the commentary, but that's why that isn't called. And this is not, it's not like it's the first time we've seen this. This is standard stuff. If you watch red zone plays around the goal line, and often teams are going for 2-point conversions, you'll see this kind of stuff all the time. I mean, part of the thing is you've got guys running interference, and that's the easiest way to put it, is guys are running interference, and Hunter there is running interference. And, look, you didn't hear any of the Bengals arguing about it. Nobody expects that to be called. And I actually think it was within what was legal, what happened on that play.
Yeah, and then not long after that, you had all your ex-officials are chiming in on all your current and former NFL officials are chiming in on this. Terry McCullough, who I think now works for Sunday Night Football on NBC, put on Twitter, my thoughts on that play was the defender is sliding over to cover AB and puts his hands up to protect himself from contact. The offensive player, which in this case was Justin Hunter, squares up and engages / blocks the defender. Contact clearly occurs more than a yard beyond the line. This should be a foul. Well, then, you get Al Riveron on the NFL officiating Twitter account, releases a whole video, explains why it wasn't in a legal pick there, why it was the defender really initiating contact past a yard and a half or what have you. And look, you could probably split hairs on these kind of plays all day long, right?
Sure.
I mean, it is embarrassing for the league, though, in my opinion. You and I talked about this right before we got on, where you have such split black and white on this from not only a former NFL official, but your current head of league officials, your vice president of league officials as well, too. So, I don't know what to say there. I mean, I don't. But to me, I never doubted, from an objective view, I never doubted that it was a legal pick.
Yeah, a legal play. Yes,
a legal play, correct. And I would like to hear Ben explain the minutia behind, start from what from what the play call was.
Yep. And so because it's just one of the look, this goes, of course, as you talked at the top about us watching a lot of stuff. If you watch what Ben does at the line of scrimmage, that's not an audible. It just doesn't look like an audible. An audible, there's a lot more verbiage that you've got to share with people there. Now you can have a touch signal, a hot with AB where you just give a look and a hand. It means the guy's going to run a certain route, but that didn't happen with that play because he's in motion and they know what they're looking at. To me, there's a chance the play wasn't called from the sideline, but I think it probably was called from the sideline. Then there's a recognition factor that guys have to recognize what's going on, what they see in coverage. A lot of times, a receiver in more complicated offenses, and this isn't always the case with the Steelers, but a receiver has to identify what they see in coverage, and they'll run a route based on what they're seeing in coverage. And that's why you see miscommunication sometimes between quarterbacks and receivers. If the quarterback reads the defense a certain way and a receiver reads it a different way, you can run into trouble. And oftentimes when you see Ben, gesticulate a certain way or something, it's probably they saw different things and the read was slightly different. So I'm with you. I'm interested to hear. I think they probably got the play call right, and the Bengals happened to opt into a defense that you just don't see that often. And really, I just don't understand the defensive call. People remember we debated forever, and I think it's still open for debate. You go back to the last Super Bowl the Steelers won against the Cardinals. The play that put them behind was Larry Fitzgerald into the middle of the field where there's no safety help. Now, whether somebody busted a coverage or zero coverage or whatever, it's just, I remember it vividly because I was sitting at the end, inside the end zone where Larry Fitzgerald was running at me, and I looked at the guy sitting next to me and said, "Where the hell are the safeties?" And who knows what the coverage was, but that play, you pretty much, if you were watching the game, you pretty much knew when Antonio Brown took his second step with the ball in his hands that was over. It was going to the house because even in leaving, and nobody was. You could tell as soon as the camera moved just a bit, and if you saw the way the Bengals lined up at the line of scrimmage with the numbers they had there, you knew they didn't have single high or they didn't have any safeties in the middle of the field, and it was to the house. It was jubilation for Steeler fans.
Well, regardless, I think regardless, because it was a 1st and 10 from the Cincinnati 34. And what did Ben say that Danny Smith told him to get to the 32? What in the 32?
The 32 obviously is inside 50 for Boz or right at 50 for Boz. So you're there.
Right, so you're there. There's 15 seconds left on the clock, right?
Yep.
So the worst thing, you still have a timeout left, right?
Two.
Oh, two.
They only used the one on the play.
Right. They used the other timeout after the touchdown. Their second timeout after the touchdown.
Right.
So they had 2 left, but even so, you're still thinking the ball's coming out quick, right?
Yeah, you can run a play there. You just, what I said was, man, just don't throw an interception here. In worst case scenario, and I'll tell you, we've had this conversation about Chris Boswell, and he's had a tough season. But I would have still bet if he was lining up for a 50-yard field goal, and you had to say bet make or miss, I would absolutely have bet make.
Not me.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I get it. I felt, he's kicked his extra points well. He looked good kicking the ball. I don't know if he likes that stadium. You pointed out, he had never missed a kick against the Bengals. He's never obviously missed one in that stadium. And I just felt like they were going to win the game, even if they threw an incompletion. Obviously, that we'll never know.
And look, I mean, they're already getting second guessed by their own players on the way back to the locker room. Vontaze Burfict, I think he was talking to Gio Bernard, yelling out to Gio, "Can you believe they called? Why we never run that? That was
well, that's the thing. Nobody runs that. You really don't. That's not a defense you see in the NFL very often.
Not so much in that
game on the line.
In that situation, normally you see it more in the goal line, right?
Yeah, sure. It's a goal line. Who cares, right?
Where you send everybody and vacate because there's less room, obviously less room to cover there. And I think Burfict even said that, we normally only run that in 2-point plays or goal line or whatever. I forget exactly what he said in that situation there. But yeah, it was a curious call. But back to the whole thing. We spent a lot of time on this one play, but it would be interesting to hear Ben talk about it right from the moment he gets the play call to, he's obviously not going to give, probably not going to run us through what all the route combinations, what all the initial, or the route combinations other than AB probably remain the same.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Hunter knew what he was running.
He's probably running a vertical either way.
Yep.
So the question, because it would just be interesting of the motion, that kind of stuff. Though, just a little minutia that goes into it. Maybe Ben will give it to us on Tuesday. Maybe he won't. But whatever. What a tremendous drive, and it just goes to show that this offense is a damn good offense and should be able to score at will.
Okay, so let's get into some. So before we get in, let's just because we have to. Let's touch on the Le'Veon Bell situation. Did James Conner's performance yesterday change anything you thought about how the Steelers should deal with Le'Veon Bell?
I mean, I think he's a damn good back. We've said before the start of the season, or right at the start of the season, can the Steelers win without Le'Veon Bell or with James Conner? The answer is yes. I mean, the kid's playing real well. I mean, and the line is in tune with him. You see a lot of that pin and pull stuff. Now, they run that pin and pull stuff with Le'Veon. They're not doing anything different schematically in play calling when it comes to James Conner versus Le'Veon Bell, except maybe, I don't know, I guess if you went to each one, they'd probably tell you we have to hold our blocks maybe a little bit longer with Le'Veon back there. The thing is, I've said this before, I'm not a fan of fixing things that are not broken, but boy, it sure would be interesting to watch how they go about handling the dynamics and all with Le'Veon coming back. I mean, you're paying him a lot of money. Does it matter, the money that you're paying him, whether or not he gets X amount of snaps or starts? I mean, I think James Conner deserves to continue playing. I'll tell you that much. I don't know how much you upset the apple cart here. I mean, you just can't tell the guy, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Maybe, Can you trade him? I mean, is he going to come in?
Would you?
Is he going to allow himself to be traded?
Would you? Well, right, and that's obviously he holds the cards on that part. So there's that. But would you take less just to move him now?
Well, we talked about a fourth in that last.
Would you take a fifth?
Man, I don't know. I'd sure like to at least get a fourth, David. I'm already.
Give you anything for Le'Veon Bell?
Huh?
Is anybody going to give you anything for Le'Veon Bell?
I mean, could you get a fifth and a quarter?
Is anybody going to pay Le'Veon Bell $15 million a year? Look, I've stood my ground on this for 2 years, and I feel somewhat vindicated. And that's probably not the right word, but James Conner's produced. My line has always been you can get 80% of the production for about 15th of the cost, and he's giving you at least 80% of the production. And you just don't pay guys $15 million you don't pay Le'Veon Bell $15 million. Now, will somebody else pay Le'Veon Bell $15 million? They might have at the start of the season. I don't know if I'm paying Le'Veon Bell that kind of money next year with him not playing. I'll take my chances somewhere else. I'm not paying that kind of money. And I think Le'Veon Bell has now mismanaged this thing as badly as he possibly could have.
Yeah, I think he has too. Let's not go back through what he was offered, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, look, he was going to get paid those first 3 years, barring him screwing up again. So I think he mismanaged it as well too. He should just. I understand the whole missing of the training camp and all like that, and preseason and stuff like that. But sign the damn deal and get in there. So.
All right. So yeah. So is he? What do you think? Is he showing up today?
I don't know how. I would bet 51% that he will, but
yeah.
I don't know, David. I really, with him now at this point, I don't know what's going through his head.
All right, so let's get back into the Bengals.
Well, I mean, what should they do? I mean, it's going to make for. What do you think of while we're talking about it, Ben? Ben sure has been on the. Ben probably has a James Conner fathead up on his wall. I mean.
Look, I'm with you. It's hard to abandon the guys who've gotten you here and what James Conner has done. Forget the backstory of James Conner. Just talk about it from a business sense, what he's done on the football field. The blitz pickup yesterday on one of those crucial plays. Great job, on that.
Was that the play to JuJu?
Yep. I don't know if that was that play to JuJu, but it was. I don't think it was the play before the touchdown, but it was late in the game. Look, he's shown that he's a capable receiver. He's certainly, going into the game, and they even mentioned this on the broadcast yesterday. He caused the most missed tackles of anybody in the league, and he added to that yesterday. Is he as good as Le'Veon Bell? Probably not. But the fact that we can at least raise the conversation, tells you loads. And again, a couple long runs yesterday, the 26-yarder, and then the one down to the goal line, which maybe was touchdown number 3. We can get into that, I'm sure. But he has earned the opportunity to continue to play for sure. I agree with that.
How many times will we talk about Le'Veon? And look, I'm not going to take an opportunity here just to take shots at Le'Veon Bell, because quite honestly, prior to these last few years, I thought that Le'Veon Bell could be a back that if he played 10 years in Pittsburgh might be, might potentially be one of the all-time greats if he stayed healthy. Le'Veon Bell is a talented back. But what is the one thing when we were in the past, prior to all this, when we've talked about Le'Veon Bell and we say, well, Le'Veon Bell's, catches a lot of balls, he, this, that, and the other, a great pass protector. What's the one thing that we usually ding Le'Veon Bell for?
Well, not being able to take it to the house.
Not be able to produce the explosive runs more than anything. Just something that he something past 15 yards. He did, that's it. We have now seen James Conner. Last year, Le'Veon Bell, I think, had 11 total explosive plays. And 4 of them were runs. James Conner already has 8 explosive plays so far this year, and I think 5 of them are.
Yeah, 5 are runs. He had 3 and 3 coming in, and I think 2 more runs yesterday.
Do people? And I stopped really tracking them on the site and talking about them, but man, David, explosive plays, the value of explosive plays in games is just absolutely tremendous. How many explosive plays do you think the Steelers had yesterday? Without looking.
I would say, you had Vance had one or two. You had JuJu had two. AB had at least two. So I guess I'm going to guess 8 or 9.
9. They had 9 explosive plays in total. How many did the Bengals have?
Not that many. Mixon might have had a couple. AJ had a couple. I would guess 4.
1.
Really, just one. They must have been close on a couple.
1. Andy Dalton, the longest pass Andy Dalton, I already charted this aspect of it. I want to take a break here for a minute too. My guys, Alex Kozora and Matthew Marksey and Josh Carney and Daniel, these guys, you just don't know the work that these guys do immediately after games. It allows me to go in right away and kind of get some of this initial charting done and charts set up for them, and so I can rattle off some of these extra kind of stats. So I don't shout out to them enough because they're busy right after games writing a lot of times, and then I go into a hole and get into some of these stats and all like that. So shout out to them. But the longest completed pass that Andy Dalton had in that game down the field flew 21 yards in the air. Now, there were a few drops. In fact, I think both quarterbacks were 2 of 8 on deep passes. And how many did each of them have either good plays or drops on the other end there? But Andy Dalton, props to the Steelers on the fact that they only had one explosive play in that game, and it was a 21-yard throw from Dalton to Green that ended up gaining 23 yards in total. But back to the whole explosive play thing. When you have that many explosive plays like that, and you don't turn the football over, and you have a differential, which 9 minus 1 is what? 8? I mean, that's a plus 8 talks right there, right? I mean, you better. It would have been very rare for the Steelers for that game to end up in a loss, and I guess it just goes back to what I'm saying. Anytime you can get explosive plays is great. Anytime you can get them on the ground without even having to put the football in jeopardy up in the air is even better. And I think that's one of the great things right now with James Conner. And this goes back to his time at Pitt, because I remember putting together a whole whole clip tape on explosive runs of his at Pitt. So that's not strange that we're seeing it. And it's just one other thing that James Conner does that gives you. So where were we in that conversation with going back to how we got down this rabbit hole? What do you do? Do you just go ahead and put Bell on the inactive list every week and say, go ahead and pay him and just keep him inactive?
No. If he's on your roster, you're gonna have him active and ready to go. You're not. I mean, even if he supplants Ridley, I mean, as much as I like Ridley, you're not. If you're paying Bell $855,000 a week, he's active and he's gonna touch the ball.
All right. Do you put him right in that? Yeah. You just I just cut you off there. I think you just put the most important thing. You just have to figure out the best way to kind of use him, that you're not going to upset the apple cart. Because I guarantee you, if he comes back and however they use him, 1 snap, 80 snaps. If this team starts losing and they're not scoring points, people are going to instantly point to what's the one thing that's different here.
I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Well, I'm saying if Bell comes back and regardless how you use them in the offense, and the Steelers lose and the offense isn't clicking, what's the one thing people are going to point to? They're going to point to, well, you should have never put Le'Veon Bell back in this.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to worry about that.
All right, offensive.
Let's get a word from.
Okay, let's get a word from our sponsors here. All right, some other offensively. I thought the offensive line played fairly well. I mean, there was a couple of some penetrations in there, but
I actually, and I haven't gone through it to the level you have at this point. But I thought, first blush, I thought they were fantastic yesterday. I mean, look, you'd like to score down on the goal line, no doubt. And on the third down play, they got beat. they got beat on the third down play. So, okay, there's that. You can point to that. But Ben generally had a ton of time. Connor didn't get it. The interesting thing is obviously, our listeners know this. And if you carry the ball 18, 19, 20 times and you have over 100 yards, your average is going to look great. James had a couple big runs. I mean, not every run was successful. I think in his first 4 carries, he had 2 yards and then he broke off the 26-yarder. So not every play was successful, but I thought it was a really across the board, a really good showing for the offensive line. DeCastro had a penalty. When I was about to tweet something about the O-line, but I think that was the only penalty the offensive line suffered. And I thought they were really good yesterday.
Yeah, they were good, especially in the interior there. And we talked about they were most effective. We see they really look good when you run some of this pin and pull stuff with DeCastro and Pouncey out to the edge. That's where a couple of these big runs came from there. And then of course goal line stuff up the middle with DeCastro and Foster, a couple of nice blocks in there as well too. And that's the thing, you have to. Imagine if those first few, and you're right, those first few runs were not very successful. You got to keep pounding this thing, at times, in hope of breaking a long one here. And the thing is what if they had gotten down and had to abandon that run? That's one of those instances.
Well, they did. They were down. I mean,
I'm talking down big. I mean, like where they really in previous games.
Aditi tweeted this morning that the Steelers committed to the run in a couple games. It's not committing to the run, not committing to the run. They played 2 games where they're down 14-0 and 21-0, where they're before you could blink. I mean, it's not game situation dictates. It's not. And here's the other thing that is annoying me. People are continually putting up James Conner stats, talking about how many touchdowns he has versus Le'Veon Bell, all that stuff. Look, how many of James Conner's? I haven't had a chance to look at this morning, so I'm just guessing. But how many of James Conner's touchdown runs have been outside? You think 3 yards? I mean, the one against Cleveland, he had a longer one, but I think they've all been kind of 1 or 2 3-yard touchdown runs mostly. Now, yesterday he would have had another one that was longer at the goal line. I'm not at all knocking James Conner, but it's if you're an offense that gets the ball to the 1 yard line and you give it to your back, you expect him to get in there. And so James Conner's had a good season. He has a bunch of touchdowns because they've been able to run the ball in from the 1 yard line. But yesterday we saw them not able to run the ball in from the 1 yard line. So these tweets about James Conner's, the number of touchdowns he has, and comparing that to Le'Veon Bell, that to me is not particularly meaningful.
No, the scores are not, but I think the stuff that I compared last week prior to the game is. Now people will try to fire back. Well, look at the defenses that that Le'Veon Bell faced in the first 6 games last year, and look at the defenses that James Conner has faced this year. Whatever, results are results. This is the NFL.
Right.
Successful play rates matter. Explosive runs matter. Plain and simple. Yards per reception matter. Now, he didn't have a good yards per reception yesterday, but a couple of those things in there. Successful play rates, explosive runs matter. They matter, David. There are no 2 ways about it. I don't care what defense you're playing against. Those things matter, and he is stacked up with Le'Veon Bell in specifically those 2 categories right now. And the pass blocking has really come around with him. I mean, he is an NFL quality starting running back now. No 2 ways about it.
Okay, so let's get into some more of the rest of what happened yesterday. JuJu. Ben's first throw downfield yesterday, fantastic throw. Couldn't make a better throw than he made to JuJu. And, you don't see JuJu miss track a ball, but there's clearly what happened there is looking over his shoulder, and the coverage was good. Let's not discount that. But we've talked about Ben throwing down the sidelines and not being accurate throwing the ball down the sidelines. You could not make a better throw than Ben made there. And JuJu, they did say, he's short arm. I don't think he's short arm, because short arm generally means you do something because you're afraid of getting absolutely cleaned out, typically over the middle. So you're trying to protect your body.
He just forgot how long his arms are.
Yeah, he just misjudged where the ball was going to be, and he didn't get his hands out there, and didn't make that play, and that was a tough way to start. And then obviously he had a drop on the second ball too. I mean, just a flat out drop. And having said that, he made a bunch of plays, and that play going on top of Denard and pulling it out at the goal line where his head was down. I've never seen it, as they said on the broadcast. Whoever the referee, the guy in the booth was, he'd never seen it. Down by head. His head was the point of contact on the ground at the goal line. I actually think the refs did actually get that call right, but that was one heck of a play.
Yeah, that should show up tonight on Monday Night Football on You Got Mossed.
Yeah, right.
Because that was and people get on me sometimes. I wouldn't trade JuJu for anything, but there have been some balls this year and he is a combative. He is what you call a combative catcher and has been going back to his time at USC. But there have been some balls this year where I've said JuJu not showing the best of hands in those situations, and he was making me right at the start of that game. Not necessarily that first one down the left sideline there, because that he did kind of just misjudge, I think, the flight of the football there. But I mean, there are instances where you would like to see his hands a little bit better. But him going up on top of Denard, and if not for an absolutely great play by Dre Kirkpatrick down the middle of the field. In this game, JuJu has another touchdown too, a deep one on another perfect.
Oh yeah, that was a great defensive play.
Perfectly thrown football by Ben as well too. And I think someone tweeted at you or me wanting us to get on Ben or whatnot in this game. Look, Ben.
Somebody said, I can't believe how many missed throws he had, or how bad. I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. It wasn't perfect, but he played fine. I mean, better than fine. He played well.
We know when and when not to get on Ben, and that yesterday was not one of them. Is there a few throws that Ben probably like to have back? Yeah, probably. But
one in the middle of the field where Burfict could have picked him off. That was that was a dangerous throw.
Well, you know what I always try to do before we get on these things. I try to can I recite the incompletions and no, I can't just yet for the times through right now. But he had 14 incompleted throws. The one through JuJu down the left sideline. Okay. The one on the slot fade to JuJu was incomplete. The one on another, I think, sort of slot fade to Antonio Brown, where he kind of got held by Kirkpatrick. Yeah. One down the middle of the field to JuJu.
By the way, that was a clear holding call on Kirkpatrick. Couldn't believe they didn't call that, because I mean it looked like a good throw. I mean, it was a little bit toward the out of bounds, but I mean he might have had him, and AB didn't bitch about it much. But I mean, he clearly got mugged. I mean, he got his arms wrapped around and pulled.
The one down the middle of the field to JuJu on a nice play by Kirkpatrick. That kind of early slip screen to James Conner
Burfict made a good play. Burfict got his hand on that. That play could have gone. The other screen to Jesse James that they missed.
The short third down throw to JuJu that popped off his hands. So shoot, we've made off 9 of them.
The one on the final drive, the pass to James on second down that they threw into the ground on first down, maybe.
The throwaway down the right side, deep throwaway.
Yep.
So I mean, look,
that's 10 or 12 right there.
So I mean, none of those were really brutal where we need to get on them. So I always use that as kind of a litmus test, because normally the bad throws stick out that you can go right to them, right? So no.
And so the
E-I-E-I-E-I-O.
All right, so
I'm talking about McDonald here. What a game!
Yeah, I mean, he was just. I mean, look, we saw him 3 times in the opening drive. He was running over people. We saw almost it wasn't quite a replay of the Tampa play, But I mean, he sheds perfect. He runs over Sean Williams, and look, they said it on the broadcast. He took a 7-yard gain. What should have been a 7-yard gain, Perfect has to get him out of bounds there. I mean, as much as I want to credit McDonald, Perfect went high on him and he just shed him, and then he goes for about 26 on the play. I mean, it was vintage. It's what we love about Vance McDonald. I mean, he was great.
Fair to call that a very Heath Miller type performance, the best 7 for 68 that you'll ever see.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, look, Heath was not that kind of runner with the football. I mean, he was a devastating blocker and a good receiver, but Heath in the open field was pretty much, guy who got him was not taking him down like he was soft, but he didn't diss guys the way McDonald does. I mean, this is unique stuff. I mean, Eric Green did a little bit of that back in the day. Benny Cunningham, a little bit different in his style of shedding guys. But I mean, this is just physical shedding guys. I mean, it impressive stuff.
7 for 68. You look at it and you say, all right. But 50, I think I tracked last night, 50-something of those yards came after the catch. So
that's a lot.
So that is quite a lot there. I like how about the play call to Grimble, clear everybody out over to one side, and Grimble just left wide up. Was that a third down play on Grimble? That was just an easy pitch in.
It was an easy throw, and he did it. He did a good job on both balls he caught. I don't know what his final numbers were, but he was a little bit elusive yesterday running with the ball.
Yeah, just what did he have? Just 2 catches, I think Grimble did. We saw Ryan Switzer do what Ryan Switzer does, and then that's going to start leading us into the kind of talk about
Mike Tomlin part of the show.
Right, the Mike Tomlin part of the show here. That route. I mean, I highlight that route when the Steelers signed Ryan Switzer. Hold on, I'm trying to get this phone out of my way here as a distraction. But when they signed Ryan Switzer, it's that kind of that 7-yard out. It's what Ryan Switzer does well.
Look, I know some people say you got to run that past the sticks and whatever. Again, a good defensive play. He worked it. He had to work to catch the ball. Again, I'm going to keep pointing this out. People are going to get tired of it. How ironic it is that he dropped the first ball the Steelers ever threw to him. Because he's not going to drop many balls. And I tweeted during the game, I mean, how incredibly confident I feel with Switzer back catching punts. I mean, he didn't catch the one punt. It was pointed out on the broadcast. It was correct. You don't know if it was misangled or it was short enough that he couldn't get there and he didn't want to be on a dead sprint when he caught it. Don't know exactly what happened, but it turned out to be obviously a very unfortunate play because Huber, who had a great game, got a 20-yard bounce out of that, and it put the Steelers, behind the chains where they could have been 20 yards further back. But he made a good catch on that play. And so the question is, should the Steelers challenge?
Right. What did you think right away? I mean, you had to think that's short. There's no way.
I did think it was short. I
did too. I thought there's no way. Why? There's no way he challenges this, and he does.
So let's be clear about one thing. And I don't know this for fact, but I'm going to state it, is if that play had been at Mike Tomlin on the other sideline and you're standing there watching it, you may have a judgment as to what happened. There's no way in my mind that Mike Tomlin from the other side of the field looked at that and said, he clearly made it, let's challenge this. Now, there are a couple things that I think could have happened. One is, if any NFL team doesn't have a replay guy up in the booth making these decisions, it's insane. I assume all 32 teams, Steelers included, have somebody in the booth responsible for watching the television replay, and then communicating with Mike. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a time when Mike might make a challenge decision on his own on the field. But when people talk about head coaching challenges and, how Tomlin did this and Tomlin that, Tomlin's not – I promise you, Mike Tomlin is not in a vacuum making that decision on his own. Okay, so I get tweeted at a million times anytime these things happen. That's not how it operates. And if it is, then it is on Mike. Then it's completely ludicrous. But it's so ludicrous that I cannot believe that's how it happens. So that's on the other side of the field. Now and we know that challenging a spot is generally a bad idea. probably 85-90% of the time, challenging the spot does not turn out the way you want it to. So, okay, so it's questionable. Now, how if you want to make a defense, how can you make a defense? Here are the only two arguments I can see that you can defend this. One is obviously, I think maybe a guy upstairs said that, we think we made it. And on that situation, on a third down on your own 20-yard line, where it becomes a first down, and that could be a significant turn if somebody clearly saw that. Okay, clearly, we didn't see them. We didn't see exactly how the review came. When the TV came back from the break, they were obviously back in punt formation. We didn't hear the description. Obviously, they didn't make it, so it didn't take long to review. Two is, and somebody suggested this to me during the game, was that they were gonna get a penalty for delay of game because they couldn't get the punt off, so they were gonna have to call timeout. So it was basically a free challenge, because they were weren't gonna get the punt off. Now I watched the replay a couple times. They did get the snap off, but they got the snap off as they were blowing the whistle and the timeout call. And so I don't know that I buy that argument, but there's a potential for that. They say, we didn't want to take a 5-yard delay game penalty there in that situation. So I don't know if that's a viable answer or not, but you're still using one of your challenges. So, it wasn't a great decision. But, again, it wasn't a great decision. It's a team decision. It is not just Mike Tomlin. Sure, at the end of the day, everything rests with Mike Tomlin. So he gets the victory yesterday. It goes under his head coaching record. But there's no way that anybody can convince me that Mike Tomlin from the other side of the field said he clearly, Switzer on the other side, clearly got across the 20. We're going to challenge this.
All right, and you're clearly right now just only talking about the Switzer play, right?
Yeah, yes, just the Switzer play.
All right, now let's get into the real meat of the discussion. Is later in the game, James Conner rips off that long run around right in midway through the third quarter, and the referee, the tumbling, bumbling, stumbling, marks him down at the 1-yard line after a nice tackle by Jesse Bates.
So I've heard reasonable people disagree on this, but so we're both clear on this one. It's clear to me he was in. I haven't seen the replay 40 times. It's clear to me that when his back hits, that ball has broached to the goal line.
Well, from the angle that we have, do we have a better?
Right. You're right. It's not a goal line angle. That's true.
Was there? Do we know? I don't remember seeing. I guess what I'm getting at there is, the more that I'm sitting here watching this thing on a loop right now, it sure does look like, if you got math involved here, that's a touchdown. But even
there's no guarantee the refs are going to call it a touchdown.
Right. But here's the thing: why not tell us that? Here's Mike Tomlin was asked, why he didn't challenge it. He says, I didn't see it. He says, you don't get opportunities at replay in visiting stadiums. That's the only
right. And so that's a very legitimate question. I know what you're going to ask me is does I mean we? Meaning his guys upstairs didn't see it and he didn't see it. So we didn't see it.
Somebody should have peppered him after that. But here's how I responded to it in my post that I wrote up last night. Okay, I get that Tomlin didn't see the replay, but what about another coach upstairs? What about Art Rooney II in the luxury box? What about me sitting in my mom's basement? Wasn't there somebody who could have immediately given Tomlin some feedback and suggest that he challenge the spot based on television replays? After all,
and that again comes back to the grand assumption that I'm making is that every team has somebody, and look, I've asked these questions, and unfortunately I won't be in the press conference tomorrow to ask the question again, but the answer should be, yeah, we've got Jerry Elsavsky up there, or who, I don't know if he'll name the person, but we've got so-and-so up there, and he's responsible for looking at that. We just didn't get a good replay.
Could it have factored into it that he lost the challenge earlier, would have been out of challenges, right? Had he blown this one in the second half.
How many times? Here's one for you to study. I'm sure you don't want to do this, but How many times in Mike Tomlin's career do you think they've used both challenges? Would you guess 10% of the time? I mean, how many times in a 16-game season do you use both challenges? 2 or 3 times a year? Maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
So it shouldn't be the fact that you used one and saving one should not be the answer. That's not a good answer in my book. That's not a good answer. And that was not his answer. Let's be clear. He did not say that was the answer.
Could it have played into his mind that, hey, we're at the 1-inch line. Surely we can pop this thing in. You don't get, to me, I don't care where you're at. If you think that's a touchdown and you're convinced that's a touchdown, you challenge and you get the touchdown then, because anything, bad snap, anything can happen on the next play.
Yeah.
You're one play away from
not having it. So, I don't buy the fact that, well, you're down. We're going to punch this thing in anyway. I mean, if you think he didn't say it either. Let's be clear. He didn't.
No, he didn't say any of that.
Yeah.
But that's one of those other things where I'd like to know more about the minutia. I want to see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, I'm with you. On that.
All right, shall we get over to the defensive side of football?
Yeah, let's talk about the defense, and let's talk about how good the defense was until they weren't. And obviously, let's go where everybody wants to go, and Artie Burns and I don't know. Clearly the play that was distinctive to me was on the last drive when Artie Burns got called for holding, which was a good call when Artie had good coverage. And when you're holding, when you have good coverage, it means you're scared, or you don't have confidence in yourself, or you've lost your technique, or you don't have it. Because he had excellent coverage on that play. He turned with the guy and he held Erickson, and they get 5 yards and an automatic first down. And it was just bad. And obviously then the touchdown, God knows what was going on there, because Artie's backpedaling 4 yards into the end zone. He's backpedaling on an out route that he has no chance of recovering on, and you won't score an easier touchdown in a pressure situation than Tyler Boyd did there. So I don't know what the right answer is, but all of a sudden Artie Burns is not the right answer.
No, he's not. And at this point now in his career, you should have a guy, at least technique-wise. You can question ability-wise all the time, but technique-wise, you would think that he would know. He would be better in situations. I mean, we are in
year 3.
Yeah, year 3. I mean, the introduction to the NFL is over now, so you just cannot keep having. It's okay to be a little bit late and not have the ability, but as far as knowing technique and all like that, either the coaching's still very, very bad, and which you would think with Carnell Lake and Bradley, you would think that stuff's being taught. And it's just bad. It's not having a good football IQ awareness, and I think that's one of the things that was a concern about Artie coming out. Was this is a kid that ran track ran some track during the off season, all like that. wasn't around the whiteboard the whole time. And I think you're seeing that his football IQ is not where it should be. That he's made it primarily on athletic ability to this point. And make no mistake, too, and I was tossing this back around in my brain, going back to the time when I was breaking down Artie's tape, there were situations even in his junior year at Miami where Artie Burns was pulled off the field, more than just a few times. It's not like he was an every down player every game. So, I thought he was a second-round corner. A lot of other people thought he was a second-round corner.
Well, who cares? Who cares now? I mean, is he an NFL corner?
Well, you got to make a decision on this guy. Not only during the next offseason with the fifth-year option. You got to. Who's the best player to put out there on the field right now?
Right, and that's it. That's the question. And I can't see the Steelers picking up that fifth-year option right now. Cannot see it. If you're splitting time with Cody Sensabaugh or Cam Sutton or whoever it may be, no way you're paying a guy $8.5, $9 million, whatever the number is going to be, going forward. And it brings corner back into play. as a high draft pick for the Steelers next year, which you didn't want. You thought maybe having taken Edmonds and Davis being young and used the pick on Artie and having Hayden and thinking maybe Sutton's can give you something, that you didn't need to go top of the draft. And I know I said this 3 months ago, that they won't need to go top of the draft for the secondary. But now, I'm not writing off Cam Sutton. I'm just saying Artie's not the answer. So
all right, people are hammering me now, want me to know, what do you think about Patrick Peterson? Should the Steelers trade for Patrick Peterson?
No, should have traded for Khalil Mack. You know what? I haven't watched Patrick Peterson. I haven't seen a Cardinals game this year, so I can't judge Patrick Peterson's effectiveness right now. Was he a great player? Has he been a great player? Yes, but I can't give a good evaluation on that. I mean, I don't know. Have you watched enough tape of Patrick Peterson?
Not so much detailed this year. I mean, the guy's a great cornerback. I would not give up a first round pick for Patrick Peterson. No chance. Would you give up a second?
No, I'd probably give up a fourth though.
Right, but I'm not convinced you can get him for a fourth.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's why people will want to understand why I dismiss these things so often. It's because it's just, it's so unlike. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, because Lord knows, you can't talk with in definitives at time. It's just it would be very
It's highly unlikely. Trades are much more common than they were 10 years ago. We've seen it. We've seen at the trade deadline here coming up, we're going to see guys moved. And Barnwell wrote an article on ESPN about 11 different trades. Some of they're mostly good ideas. He's a reasonably smart guy and he writes some interesting stuff. And, it's Le'Veon Bell this, and the Steelers getting a linebacker from somebody, that. So, there are things you can throw out there. Just the idea that, you're going to match up a player in one of 31 other teams is highly unlikely. So I don't see the Steelers making a move for a corner. And it was back to the game. It was not Artie's best day. Here's another thing. And I saw somebody comment on this and I responded. Sean Davis and Terrell Edmonds' name didn't get called once. And somebody was being critical, like, where are the safeties? They haven't made a play. Now, having said that, you pointed out there was one pass over 20 yards in the air. They didn't get beat deep, and the Bengals weren't gouging them. So while Edmonds and Davis may not have gotten a lot of their name wasn't called much, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, yeah, you don't want your safeties leading the team in tackles.
No, and that's exactly right. And who else's name wasn't called? I think I heard his name one time in the game was John Bostic, and I didn't see Bostic much. We saw Vince Williams all over the place, and Vince had an interesting game. It was I had tweeted that it was boom or bust at some point because he missed some plays for sure. He got beat, but he made some plays, and most notably, when they flanked Mixon out wide, that was exactly what you're begging for, because Vince went with him and stood on top of him. This was not zone coverage. Dalton knew it immediately. He's got Mixon out there one-on-one with Vince Williams. I mean, every quarterback in the NFL is licking their chops for that opportunity. And Dalton threw a pretty good ball, and Vince ran with him. To his credit, Vince he had a sack. He made some other plays in the game, but that play, to me, that was as you were tweeting the plays to circle, that was a circle play for Vince Williams to make that coverage play.
Yeah, but look, make no mistake about it. You want to talk about some warts? That's the position with warts still, because he got beat to the edge on one run by Mixon as well, too. And it makes you wonder if you had a more athletic – well,
T.J. Watt lost contain on a couple of those Mixon runs at the edge, which, he's got to do a better job.
Well, sometimes you can't let the guy get outside of you. Now, if you set it and at least force the guy back inside, that's one thing. And, obviously I haven't gotten down into deciphering a lot of that on the defensive line or outside linebacker play yet. But it was noticeable. It's noticeable on some sideline-to-sideline stuff with Vince Williams, and it's noticeable on some of these backside runs that we highlighted one that L.J. Fort made a good last week. I think Vince on one of these runs yesterday, maybe it was a 16-yard run or whatnot, where it looked like he got himself out of place a little bit. On one of those backside, cutback type runs there. So If you want to talk about, and you go back to Sean Davis. Sean Davis still takes some very questionable angles. From he'll come running up like a ball of lightning and run himself past it a little bit. He's got to learn to take some better angles. I think maybe give up an extra 2 or 3 yards, but make sure you get the guy on the ground. The thing that stands out most, I think, is when you look at they had how many. Talk about pluses for this defense yesterday. Andy Dalton completed, 42 or 26 passes for 229 yards. What did I put down on yards after the catch? Like 48 or 49 on Twitter. So they did a great job with tackling the catch yesterday. They didn't we already talked about it, only gave up one explosive play. So that means they did fairly great against the run as well too. In fact, the Bengals only had 62 yards net rushing in that game on 13 total carries. 17 came on one run by Nixon in there, so they did good in that area. They didn't do good on certain key get-off downs. They to me they allowed Uzama.
Bengals' first touchdown drive, they converted 3 third downs.
Right. Uzama had a bigger day than probably what he should have had. Boyd, obviously, look, I mean. Tip your hat to play call design on that first touchdown to Boyd. You get a guy singled up like that on Chicolo. That was a great throw and a great catch, on that first Boyd touchdown. And, Anthony Chicolo didn't have a chance on that play. Bengals did drop a couple of balls that should have been had, that had nothing related to do with the defense there. So sometimes you get into situations where, your guys make more plays than their guys did. I mean, they left a lot of play. Cody Core had a drop in that game as well, key drop. I think A.J. Green had 3 of them. Of course, you could circle back around and say Joe Hayden should have had a gimme interception.
Oh, my goodness. Joe Hayden will have an easier one than that.
Overall on that. But it comes down to this, and I was disappointed when the game was on the line that the defense could not get a stop. So that's a disappointing factor there. Because if you get a stop, game's over, right?
Game's over if you get a stop. And it would have been interesting to see if the Bengals went for it on they had a 3rd down and 6 on their own kind of 30 or so. It would have been 35 maybe. It would have been interesting to see if they went for it, if they didn't convert. But, of course, they did convert, so never know.
Right. So, I mean, they won the game. They held them to 21 points. And you should win those games, but they had to rely on their offense to win it. And that was a disappointing aspect. Look, special teams didn't help out in this game either. Boy, right?
My goodness. They're terribly costly at the end of the first half.
And then open up the second half.
Yeah, good on the defense at the start of the second half to get a stop after an even bigger return by Erickson. Coming back, finally, Rosie Nix made a tackle on the next kick. They finally, that hasn't been a problem this year. So let's acknowledge that they've been good at coverage. They haven't been burned by that, but to be burned back to back on consecutive kickoffs, that wasn't good. Better game from Jordan Berry. We finally saw a booming punt, 65 yarder from Berry. We talked about Switzer, all the good things he's done. Not catching that one punt was a little bit of a special teams. It was a special teams negative. It was not the best day overall for special teams, although you can't pin any of this on. Barry had a bad punt. That one that bounced out of bounds, 36 yards. But, it wasn't the best special teams day. Hey, Dave, but my bookie, I think I might have actually had a good day yesterday against you. As some things are, the NFL, man. How about the games yesterday? The Ravens with 11 sacks, Jags giving up 40 points. Great game last night between New England, Kansas City. The games are somewhat more entertaining. You've got a little action on it. You've heard us talking about it for weeks. If you're still on the sidelines, whether you're an expert or a rookie, you should be at mybookie.ag. You can do all sorts of plays. We've talked about all the fantasy options they have. You can do parlays, turn a small bet into a big winner. If you do a 3-team, 4-team, 5-team parlay, you've got playoff baseball, hockey, all sorts of things. You can be NBA just around the corner. My bookie's the one bet we know you'll be happy with all year. So we've been recommending these guys for years. They've got great online reviews. The mobile site's very easy to use. If you're on the sideline, get in a game. They'll still match you dollar for dollar. This is going to be about it. This is probably the last week, up to $1,000 on your initial bet. Use our promo code Terrible Podcast. Use the promo code Terrible, and they'll match you up to 100%, up to $1,000. You play, you win, you get paid. New England Patriots got paid last night. I had to just amuse myself. I took a poll on Twitter last night. I said, who are you rooting for? And the two choices were Chiefs, you idiot, or the Cheaters. And it was 90% rooting for the Chiefs versus the Patriots last night.
Yeah, but I think in a grand scheme of things, that win by the Patriots probably helped a little bit more helpful to the Steelers,
Yeah,
because the Chiefs were undefeated going into that game. And you need the Chiefs to lose, because now you're going to be rooting for the Chiefs back this week against the Bengals next Sunday night there as well.
For the Chiefs to go straight through and say, it's okay if you have to meet the Chiefs, you're not going to have home field anyway because you lost to them head to head, so you're unlikely. So any loss to the Patriots, you might get them earlier and root for them to have a better chance against the Patriots. But it is what it is. It's week 6. It's too much football to worry about.
One thing that need to start seeing from this defense, or from special, we've seen it some from special teams, block, punt, whatnot, and stuff like that. Man, the Steelers starting field position, David, yesterday, absolutely brutal. 25, 16, 25, 10, 25, 26, 12, 24, 12, and 23. The Steelers' best starting field position yesterday was the 26-yard line, and that was the kickoff right before the Ben Roethlisberger kneeled down to end the first half. So,
did you have any problem with Switzer taking the ball out of the end zone with 1:18 left? It took 6 seconds, and he only got to the 23 versus the 25. Could have knelt on it. What was your thought when he brought it out? Were you pro, nothing, or against?
Yeah, it really wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. Is because there's a chance maybe that ball only goes to the 20-yard line and you use five yards, but there's a chance something big happens. And I just think when you think of plays and you're just trying to get in field goal range, I was for him doing it because of the off chance that he breaks it to midfield. Basically you get another play for 6 seconds. I was willing to take that risk. I know some people were going to disagree with that. So just another talking point.
I thought Tua had a decent game yesterday with some push. I thought Hargrave had some decent snaps in there.
Didn't hear much about Cam, although the Steelers got decent pressure on Dalton. I'll say that. It's just Vince was, obviously Vince was the most visible guy. I mean, Hayden's a guy.
Obviously already stuck out for the wrong reasons there. You're right. We're not talking a lot about the safeties today, and that's probably a good thing as well. So we'll get into the All-22 when it comes out later tonight, and then when we get back together on Wednesday, being as this a bye week, we'll have a little bit more time to digest everything and go over everything. I think Aditi is reporting as we start to close out this show that Steelers starting to get into headquarters this morning after yesterday's big win. One player just messaged me, no sign of running back Le'Veon Bell. Players meet today, practice Tuesday and Wednesday, are then off until next Monday. The watch continues. She's just tweeting right now. And nothing related to Le'Veon Bell. So Le'Veon Bell watch is underway, and we'll see if we have anything to report on Wednesday. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button up right navigational bar. We also have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. If you hit the ad-free button, $25 for a calendar year gets you access to SteelersDepot.com with no ads on it whatsoever. And until Wednesday.
As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.